Welcome to Alaska Weather, a production of Alaska Public Media and the National Weather Service, Alaska Region. Produced and broadcast daily from the studios of KAKM, Alaska Weather provides complete forecasts, public, marine, and aviation for all of Alaska. Alaska Weather is made possible by the following sponsors.
It's never too early to set expectations and goals for your child's education. The UA College Savings Plan provides opportunities that can help you reach your educational savings goals. Save in Alaska. Study anywhere. There is more information available by calling 1-888, the number 4, and then Alaska. This message sponsored by the UA College Savings Plan.
The National Weather Service.
Hello everyone, and thanks again for joining us here at the KAKM studios for Friday's edition of Alaska Weather. Wind gusts here from the Bering Sea storm last evening and today, 81 miles an hour at AKwx. Shemya kicked up to 76 miles per hour. These are peak wind gusts, and Cape Newenham this morning had southeast winds gusting to 70 miles per hour, and St. Paul 61 miles per hour. Looking at the chart here for warnings, there's still a winter storm warning out for the Yukon Delta through tomorrow till 6 p.m. Saturday. Looking for 4 inches of snow, winds 40 to 60 miles per hour here over the next 24 hours. And there's still a winter storm warning out also for St. Lawrence Island, the Bering Strait coast, for northeast winds gusting to 60 miles per hour with about 3 inches of snow, additional snowfall in those areas. Then back to the west a little bit, the lower Yukon Valley, excuse me, has a winter weather advisory out. That's for tonight, and that's for 4 to 6 inches of snow expected to fall across that area. And then back here to the east, the wind advisory remains out for the passes of the eastern Alaska Range for gusts to 55 miles per hour, and that's out until 6 a.m. Saturday. Moving on to the satellite imagery, yesterday, pretty big area of low pressure here well south of the Gulf of Alaska. A couple of frontal bands rotating northward and weakening, and also into the southeast coast. And back out to the west, a pretty large frontal boundary and that intense storm system coming into the southwest Bering Sea. A lot of moisture spreading eastward and northward. Again, snow and gusty winds into the Pribilof Islands. And then for today, you can see that front early this morning, still off the southwest coast. And that's when all the strong winds were occurring there with the snow and blowing snow. And then throughout the day today, that mostly moved eastward and rotated a little ways up to the north there, rain and snow into Kodiak Island. And some areas of snow here across the southwest interior, mixing in with rain from Bristol Bay, showers across the Alaska Peninsula to the eastern Aleutians there. Unalaska seeing gusts of 58 miles per hour today, with moderate rain showers moving through late this afternoon, and then strong winds and showers and rain there for the Pribilof Islands, with again those winds southwest 40 to 60 miles per hour. Less shower activity, more scattered along the Aleutians, but still quite windy across AKwx out towards Shemya. Otherwise here, a nice day over south central Alaska, the North Gulf Coast, and into Prince William Sound. Then the clouds spreading in, the high clouds here during the afternoon hours, and also northward. But not bad here across the Panhandle as well, and a nice day from the Copper River Basin up through the eastern interior. More clouds and some moisture right up to the eastern Arctic coast. On the chart here, that's associated with a weak trough through this area. Again, some areas of flurries and fog from the central interior right up across the Arctic Village to Anatuvik and the eastern North Slope to the eastern Arctic coastal areas, but the snowfall amounts were quite light. Rain and snow showers, Prince William Sound, the North Gulf Coast today, and a few widely scattered snow showers over the northern Panhandle. Otherwise, a pretty dry day here with some clearing down across the southeast coast with light winds. And the front moving into about this position late this afternoon, about 3 p.m. Again, the rain and snow into Kodiak, and then areas of snow blowing and drifting here from the southwest interior back out across St. Lawrence Island and then a break here behind the front, and that coming into the Bethel area improved quite a bit here for the afternoon as opposed to what it was in the morning. And then the shower activity spreading into the Alaska Peninsula, rain showers here with the milder air back up toward the Pribilofs, and then the colder air mixing with snow here for the central Aleutians, snow showers out over the western Aleutians with those northwest winds. And the forecast for tonight have one low kind of weakening and coming northward into a trough. That's going to spread some moisture into the southern panhandle later on tonight. The front continues eastward here, and low, 972 millibar low, forms right over the Barren Islands. Good southeast winds here coming into the coast, gale force winds with rain along the North Gulf Coast, rain and snow Prince William Sound. Chance of snow after midnight for northern Cook Inlet, and then a band of snow back along this frontal boundary either side there, spreading up again, keeping the winter storm warning going there for the Yukon Delta, the winter weather advisory for the lower Yukon Valley, and then that also the winter storm warning for St. Lawrence Island up to the Bering Strait coast there, associated with the front very close to the area. And then that trough keeping some light snow off to the northeast there from the Koyukuk Valley northeastward to the Eastern Brooks Range. But better conditions back to the west and just a few clouds, patchy fog like you saw today at Barrow there along areas of the eastern Arctic coast. Otherwise, the Bering Sea, this low, still pretty deep there at 953 millibars, heading eastward toward Nunivak Island. High wind warning out tonight for the Pribilofs. Look for gusts to 75 miles per hour or more there with lowering snow levels, so the rain showers will become more snow showers as the night wears on. Scattered rain and snow showers with quite windy conditions here for the eastern Aleutians. Not quite as much wind for the Alaska Peninsula and even less there for Bristol Bay, but pretty windy across the southern Bering Sea and the Aleutians there with gales and storm force winds continuing through tonight. And then for tomorrow, this low edges eastward even farther and drops about 10 millibars to 963 there as it gets close to Macoriac. Good southwest flow keeps numerous rain and snow showers in across the southwest coast and Bristol Bay up to about Bethel. And then conditions become a little more showery, but the strong winds continuing there for the Yukon Delta, St. Lawrence Island, and then some light snow flurries there for Kotzebue Sound, Selawik Valley areas, eastern Norton Sound, narrow band up to the northeast there. Again, just catching Kaktovik and Barter Island, and that front bringing gale force winds into the southeast coast, and even small craft advisories developing over the inside waters there with rain to the central and southern areas, rain and snow up to the north. Rain back along the North Gulf Coast into Prince William Sound, and that becoming in the form of snow here as you move inland. Chance of snow south central Alaska tomorrow, less of that, just maybe some flurries along the Alaska Range. Tanana Valley dry, upper Yukon Valley also dry, and back to the northwest there, the western Arctic coast, North Slope areas looking pretty good, and good northwest winds, storm force winds here out of the northwest for the Pribilofs tomorrow with snow showers going, scattered showers for the eastern Aleutian areas, and ridging out here to the west, drying it out for Adak and Atka, and out toward Shemya. That next system bringing gale force winds back in again with precipitation during at least by the afternoon hours. And then for Sunday, kind of a couple of systems linking up, one coming up from the south, kind of interacting with this frontal boundary. That just means more gusty winds and precipitation for the central Aleutians, snow showers back out to the west. And then the low here tracks inland here to near Lake Iliamna and weakens to 980 millibars. So a lot of snow showers back to the west, cooler temperatures with gusty northwest winds, less wind up over Norton Sound, definitely less wind for St. Lawrence Island as well, but still some lingering snow showers in that area. Higher pressure here from the northern Bering Sea down across the Pribilofs to the eastern Aleutians, making for a dry day, maybe some sunshine there around the Kulski and Unalaska. Isolated snow showers by the afternoon there for the Alaska Peninsula, and some lingering snow showers still going on around the Pribilofs into the afternoon. And then another trough keeps rain and snow showers or rain here for the southeast coast. And that same pattern extends back to the west to Prince William Sound. Pretty good chance of some new snow coming into Cook Inlet and the Madanuska-Susitna Valleys tomorrow night and into Sunday morning, becoming more showery in the afternoon. Could see a couple inches in some areas there, and some of that will extend back to the northwest a little bit, but generally north of the Alaska Range, pretty dry, a few flurries possible over the mid and upper Tanana Valley areas, but nothing significant, and mostly dry with some clearing in the skies there for the Koyukuk Valley back out to Kotzebue Sound and northward into the western North Slope. Look for some patchy fog again for the eastern Arctic coastal areas, and Kodiak rain and snow showers with gusty west winds continuing in that area, and then a lot of showers still have yet to push onto the southeast coast, probably Sunday night and into Monday. And temperatures this afternoon starting along the Panhandle, 30s across the area there. Klawock up to 39, Juneau at 36, 36 also at Sitka, and a 32-degree reading at Skagway. About that at Yakutat, Valdez 28, 35 in Seward. Copper River Basin, Gulkana at 5 above, Northway 13 below. Quite a difference there with the wind at Delta with 11 above. And then Fairbanks back down to 2 below zero, -6 at Fort Yukon. Otherwise, Tanana had 8, Bettles at -2, Anaktuvik at 3, 10 degrees at Fort Yukon. And again, the Arctic coast generally near or above zero, the exception being Atchison at 9 below, Point Lay at -5. Cape Lisburne had 9 above, and then 3 below at Kotzebue, 3 above there at Deering, 0 at Shishmaref. Nome up to 20 though on the south side of the peninsula, 21 at Gamble, 6 below there at McGrath with a 25-degree reading this afternoon, a little milder at Bethel, 11 at St. Mary's, right at the freeze mark for Macoriac and Sparrowvon, 37 in King Salmon, 34 at Cape Newenham, and 30s and 40s here for the Alaska Peninsula, mostly in the 30s though, but Sandpoint up to 43, 41 at Nikolsky, same thing at Atka, 34 way out west at Chimia. Lows for tonight in the 30s, upper 20s to mid 30s here for the southeast coast, and 20s south central Alaska to a little below zero for the Copper River Basin. North of the Alaska Range below zero, but again, not all that far below zero. Could see some minus teens in there, 20 below. Clear areas in the North Slope there, and teens here down along the southwest coast, 30s for the Alaska Peninsula and the Aleutians. And then the highs tomorrow, not too bad, staying below zero over the North Slope and portions of the Arctic coast. Above zero though through the Tanana and Upper Yukon Valley areas, and quite a bit above zero south in the mountains, looking at upper 20s to mid 30s for south central Alaska, 30s to lower 40s for the southeast coast, upper 30s Alaska Peninsula and the Aleutians. Flying weather, marginal VFR, IFR in the increase here, spreading eastward, coming onto the coast late tomorrow afternoon. So conditions deteriorating throughout the day. Of course, that one batch coming northward late tonight there toward the area. And IFR across the Gulf of Alaska into western Prince William Sound, southern Kenai Peninsula, western Cook Inlet up to the eastern slopes of the western Alaska Range, with more IFR in the Pribilofs, Nunivak Island, across the northern Bering Sea. Areas of marginal VFR mainly over the eastern Arctic coast, and then that band extending southwestward here into the west central interior. And then that next system spreading more IFR into the far western Aleutians. Passes Anaktuvik looks open tomorrow. VFR on either approach. Adigan, same forecast, wide open. Lake Clark and Merrill, marginal VFR, lowest conditions on both eastern entrances, which will probably be IFR. And for rainy, that same pattern as well, IFR in the eastern entrance. Otherwise marginal. For windy, VFR. Isabel looking good. Mentasta wide open tomorrow. Tanita should be VFR throughout the day. Portage, though, IFR. And Chilkoot and White, occasionally marginal. And for the freezing levels here at the surface, way up north of St. Matthew Island, late tonight, early tomorrow morning, then down along Bristol Bay, up in across southern Alaska, and then kind of hugging the southeast coastline there with 2,000 feet in over the Gulf of Alaska. Icing, again with the front coming in, most of the heavier stuff will be from the Queen Charlottes and along the coast, but that'll all be moving inland throughout the day tomorrow. So light to isolated moderate rime icing here below about 12,000 feet for the southeast coast, extending back into Prince William Sound, south central Alaska, and some more icing here along the southwest coast and the southeast Bering Sea below about 8,000 feet. And at the wind flow at roughly 30 to 33,000 feet tomorrow shows the stronger Pacific jet here south of the entire state, but we've got that low here coming eastward slowly across the southeast Bering Sea, so that's giving generally south to north flow, keeping the clouds and moisture in along the North Gulf Coast, and especially back here in the trough over the southwest interior, but better conditions up to the north. and westerlies 40 to 50 knots across the Arctic coast. 9,000-foot winds tomorrow, low close to St. Lawrence Island. Good west-northwesterlies, mostly westerlies here, 40 to 60 knots across the southern Bering Sea and the Aleutians, diminishing though over the west central Aleutians, then turning southerly at about 50 knots with that next system coming in from the west. Easterlies 30 knots, northern Bering Sea, Norton Sound. Southeast 30 knots for south central Alaska, and then 15 to 25 for the remainder of the interior. 3,000 feet tomorrow. Again, low near Nunivak Island, one in the Gulf of Alaska. Head of that front, 40 to 50 knot winds there along the Panhandle and in along the North Gulf Coast. 20 knots over the eastern interior, and 25 to 40 knots here to the west, and then coming back around right across the Pribilofs at 50 knots out of the northwest. Westerlies 35 to 50 knots over the western and central Aleutians, then becoming south 40 out towards Shimia. And for turbulence, occasional moderate chop here from the northwest interior through the Bering Strait, St. Lawrence Island, along the Yukon Delta coast down to the Pribilofs. Mechanical turbulence with those stiff westerlies there from the eastern Aleutians, Alaska Peninsula along and east of Kodiak Island. And from Prince William Sound, ahead of that front, spreading into the southeast coast throughout the day, below about 6,000 to 8,000 feet. And after the break, Hanger Flying, I'll be back with some more interesting information and conditions.
Good evening. I'm Harry Keeling. On behalf of the Alaskan Aviation Safety Foundation and Alaska Public Media, welcome to Hanger Flying. I hope you all have been able to tune in the past two episodes, because we've been talking to John White, who is currently an aviation professor at UAA. Last time he described an incredible situation that he was involved in, where he was flying in South Africa and diverted into Madagascar because of weather, and what turned out was unbelievable. And the courage that he showed in the next 7 years, he landed there. He was taken prisoner over time, and in my estimation, just as a political prisoner for no wrongdoing, just a political pawn. But he spent 7 years in this African prison before he was released. So let's listen to the rest of the story. John, welcome back.
Thank you very much, Harry.
You talked about conditions, which sounded horrible.
Okay.
You talked about your dad trying to rescue you. Were there other people in the cell with you?
There was, that varied a lot, Harry. When we first got captured, the three of us were kept in a cell. And then we were we spent some time in their big cells. They had these cells with literally 3 layers of bunks, and about 200 people in a cell that should have accommodated probably 40 or less. So massive overcrowding. Your space on the bunk, in fact, was like 18 inches. So you could only lie on your side, and then you couldn't turn over because you'd be disturbing the guy next to you. But and then we went through a lot of different prisons after the escape.
So one of the things that amazes me is you really went through some hardships and deprivation for 7 years, but you managed to keep your health, and by the time you were released, you were back flying and I think you maintain a Class 1 physical today. How do you account for that?
I don't know, really. I kind of just live life, and obviously I enjoy life, and I don't think there's any particular secret about keeping a first-class medical. It's probably mostly luck, but yeah, I do still have a first-class medical.
Were you able to exercise when you were in prison?
In some situations, yes. When I was alone in one prison after the escape, and I managed to set up a parallel bar and get some weights and did some exercises, yes. So, and did a bit of running around the courtyard.
So, I've got so many questions, but one thing I want to make sure we do, in front of you is a book that your wife wrote, and I would, it's called The Stolen Years, and I would highly recommend it to any of our audience. It goes into detail of this incredible story of John's, and it's called The Stolen Years. John, let's let's bring this to a close. How did you finally, how did they finally, or why did they finally release you?
Well, we were sentenced to 5 years for their overflying the country, which we actually had the authority to do, and then we were sentenced to an additional 2 years for their escape. So after 7 years we were released, but during that whole period we never knew whether we would be released. There was never nobody ever told us anything until, in fact, a few days before the release, and they came in and said, you guys are going, and we still found it hard to believe. And we were just flown out on Air Madagascar to Mauritius, where we met with our families.
So I don't think, you and I have talked about this, but I don't think we shared this with the audience, but talk a little bit about the kind of the political pawn situation that you were placed in, that they were trying to get Nelson Mandela released and exchange of, how do you look back on that?
Well, you know, it would have been nice if they'd done an exchange, but when we came back to South Africa, we were interviewed by the Minister of the Minister of Foreign Affairs, which is like your Secretary of State in the States, and their argument was we couldn't do anything with a prisoner swap, because if we'd done that, then any South African anywhere in the world would have been in danger, so they couldn't do it.
But you're the one that suffered for it.
Apparently.
Well, John, I got to tell you, it's a real honor to have gotten to know you, to hear your presentation, to have you on the program tonight, and I've got to tell you that I admire your courage, and I admire the story that you tell, and I would offer, ladies and gentlemen, that here's a man that loves aviation, that grew up with aviation, and I mean, the irony of diverting for weather. I mean, you know, we talk about diverting for weather a lot, but in this case, the consequences were untold and pretty severe. But it's great having you on the show, and I hope that you all enjoyed it. And I hope you'll tune in next time. And also, as we get to the end of the year, I'd ask you to go on our website and renew your membership for 2016. And have a good Christmas and holiday season, and be sure to fly safe.
Welcome back. We're looking at today's sea ice analysis, continuing to advance west and southwest here across the area from what it was yesterday. And the forecast over the next 5 days through Wednesday, north of the latitude of St. Matthew Island, so it'll be this portion right here, that's expected to advance westward 10 to 25 nautical miles, and then the area down onto the south, that's also expected to advance to the west, but only at about 5 to 10 nautical miles, again through Wednesday. Southeast winds 20 to 25 knots for the south coast, easterly gales on the north coast, and some pretty good small craft advisory winds, 30 knots here from the southeast for Clarence Strait. Northerlies 30 knots, Stevens Passage through Lynn Canal. Then for Sunday, we've got west to southwest winds, 20 to 25 knots, except southeast there from the north coast. Southeasterlies 20 knots for the inside waters, northern Lynn Canal though, south of 20. And gales here for the North Gulf Coast. Also Prince William Sound, but these will be diminishing in the afternoon, coming down to about 20 knots in the afternoon. And northeast small craft advisories for Cook Inlet. Westerlies up to 35 knots there for Kodiak Island. And for Sunday, small craft advisories here for Kodiak Island, Shelikof Strait, and the Barren Islands. And also for the North Gulf Coast, northwesterlies 25 knots, northeast 15 for Prince William Sound. Bristol Bay southwest winds tomorrow at 30 knots, westerlies 40 to 45 knots blowing across the Alaska Peninsula with gale force winds all the way up to Sitkinak. And for Sunday, west winds 30 knots or Bristol Bay, and 35 knot winds here on the Bering Sea side of the peninsula. Otherwise from Cape Sarachev up to Sitkinak, west winds at 30 knots with 15 to 17 foot seas. And we've got storm warnings out for the eastern Aleutians tomorrow. West winds up to 50 knots and seas running up to 38 feet. And then some good gales here back to the west to Adak and Atka. And then gales coming back into the picture there for the western Aleutians, that next front, south 35. And then that system advances eastward, southeast winds 35 knots into the central Aleutians, and kind of a variable wind direction here, south to southwest, 25 knots for the Fox Islands. And for the southwest coast, south of Nunivak Island, southwesterlies 30 knots blowing right into Kuskokwim Bay, southeast 25 to the north. Northeast 40, St. Lawrence Island, gales here from the northern Bering Sea, west 50 knots, 36-foot seas rolling into the Pribilof Islands. And those drop back considerably the next day on Sunday, northwest coming down to 20 knots, seas subsiding, still have some gales here south of Nunivak Island, and northerlies lighter now for St. Lawrence Island, 30 knots or less. And for the Arctic coast, north to west, 15 to 20 knots on the east side. Light northerlies there for the central coast, and then northeasterlies 15, picking up to 25 knots, Cape Beaufort, and 30 knots there on down toward Wales. Outlook for Saturday, not much change in the wind direction. Still looking at brisk wind advisories here from Wales up to Cape Beaufort, but north 15 for the western coast. Northwesterlies, central and eastern coast at about 10 knots, picking up a little bit there on the east side. For tonight, again, some moisture coming at the southern panhandle here from the south, and then also up to the North Gulf Coast here with increasing winds with a low center, about 972 millibars developing there near the Barren Islands. This system slowly weakening. Again, high wind warning out for the Pribilofs tonight. Winter storm warnings, Yukon Delta, St. Lawrence Island through tomorrow. And then we've got still looks pretty damp along the North Gulf Coast. Rain and wind moving into the panhandle. This system now almost on top of Nunivak Island tomorrow afternoon. Numerous rain and snow showers, gusty winds here from Bristol Bay up to the Yukon Delta. Band of snow here up to the northeast. And then for Sunday, that low moves inland. Pretty good chance of snow tomorrow night for northern Cook Inlet, but drier to the north. Have a great weekend.
These forecasts are to be used for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating. Alaska Weather is made possible by the following sponsors.
The National Weather Service.
If subsistence hunting, trapping, and fishing are important to you, please consider applying for one of the open seats on your Federal Subsistence Regional Advisory Council. These seats will be filled by rural Alaskans who are knowledgeable about fish and wildlife subsistence in their region. Apply by Friday, January 29th, 2016. Information at 1-800-478-1456 or email subsistence@fws.gov.